The kitchen smelled of cinnamon and vanilla sunlight pouring over the counters as I stirred the batter for my father's 70th birthday cake. Laughter drifted in from the living room, where my mother directed the decorations with her usual precision. Everything should have felt warm, familiar, safe. But when my phone buzzed on the counter, a cold thread of fear snaked through me. An anonymous text, just 7 words. "Check your husband's storage unit. You'll want to see this." I froze, the wooden spoon slipping from my hand. The room blurred around me. Andrew, my husband of 10 years, had just left. Claiming a work emergency, I wanted to believe it was a mistake. A prank. But something deep inside me already knew the truth. I wiped my hands, grabbed my keys, and made a decision that would tear my world apart before the candles on my father's cake were ever lit. What about you? If you received a message like that, would you ignore it? Or would you go look even if you feared what you might find? Tell me in the comments below. And if you want to hear how everything unraveled, stay with me until the very end. I told myself it was nothing as I drove across town, the morning sun flashing off the windshield like tiny knives. Andrew loved me. We had built a life together. A home, dreams, 1,000 ordinary days stitched into a decade of shared existence. Still, my hands trembled against the steering wheel. Andrew Carter was the man who had swept me off my feet at 25. His easy smile and steady presence pulling me into a world where I thought I could finally be safe. After years of watching my parents' brittle marriage play out like a Cold War, I believed I had found something different, something better. He was charming, reliable, the kind of man who remembered anniversaries without reminders, who sent flowers just because. But in the last year, things had shifted. Small cracks, excuses piling up like fallen leaves, late nights at the office, missed dinners, conversations that felt thinner, more strained. I told myself it was stress, the economy, the pressure of aging parents needing more attention. Anything but what my gut sometimes whispered late at night when I stared at the ceiling, counting the lies we told ourselves just to sleep. The storage unit loomed ahead, a squat gray building at the edge of town, crouching low under the weight of 1,000 forgotten lives. We had rented it 8 years ago when we bought the house. Old furniture, boxes of college textbooks, holiday decorations we never bothered to unpack. It was supposed to be temporary, like most things that quietly become permanent. I had not been here in years. The gravel crunched under my tires as I pulled into the empty lot, my heart hammering so loudly it drowned out the radio. I killed the engine and sat there for a long moment, staring at Unit 142. Nothing moved, no sound but the distant hiss of the highway. I opened the glove box and pulled out the battered key Andrew kept hidden under a pile of useless papers. It slid into the padlock with a reluctant click, the metal cold against my palm. For one breathless second, I hesitated. I could still turn back. Go home, pretend I never saw the message. Bake the cake, smile through the party. Keep my pretty broken world intact. But the seed of doubt had already rooted itself deep inside me. I could not unknow what I knew. I pulled the door open, the screech of rusted metal slicing through the silence. The smell hit me first. Dust, old fabric. Something faintly metallic, like forgotten blood stacks of boxes, leaned precariously against one another. A broken armchair slumped in the corner. A cracked mirror reflected my pale face back at me, the glass splitting my reflection into a dozen fractured versions of myself. At first it looked exactly how I remembered, a graveyard of forgotten things. But as I stepped deeper inside, weaving between the piles, small details began to gnaw at me. A wine bottle, not dusty like the others, clean, recently used. A glint of foil caught my eye under a shelf. I bent down, my stomach already knotting before my fingers closed around it. A condom wrapper. I stood there, frozen, my heart, a hollow drumbeat in my chest. I wanted to scream, to tear the place apart, to find proof that would somehow make sense of the senselessness coiling around me. Instead, I tucked the wrapper into my pocket, wiped my hands on my jeans, and kept moving. Near the back, half buried under a pile of books, I found a small torn label, Lux Leather Company. It meant nothing at first, just a brand. But later it would be the thread that unraveled everything. I left the unit, locking it behind me with fingers that barely obeyed my brain's commands. As I drove back toward my parents' house, the truth rode with me, heavy and silent, sitting in the passenger seat like an unwelcome ghost. The party would go on, the candles would be lit, the cake would be cut, and I would smile, play my part, and wait for the right moment. The moment to burn it all down. When I pulled back into the driveway, the house was alive with noise and light. Balloons bobbed at the mailbox. Cars crowded the curb. Inside, laughter spilled from open windows. The clink of glasses and rustle of celebration pressing against the walls. I sat there for a long moment, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. The normalcy of it all was unbearable. I tucked the wine bottle, the condom wrapper, and the label deeper into my purse, hiding them like they were something shameful. Like I was the one who needed to be embarrassed. With a steadying breath, I pushed open the door and stepped into the chaos. "Rachel," my mother called from the dining room, her voice sharp with urgency. "Where have you been? The florist delivered the wrong centerpieces, and the cake needs icing." "I'm here now," I said, forcing a brightness I did not feel. "I'll fix it." I moved through the house like a ghost, half seeing the banners, the photo collages, the familiar faces, neighbors, family, friends, people who had known me since I was a child. I caught sight of Andrew near the kitchen sleeves, rolled up laughing too loudly at something my uncle said. He looked normal, untouched, untarnished. My stomach turned. It would be so easy to believe the lie, to bury the evidence, smooth over the cracks, and pretend that tonight was just another milestone, another perfect Carter family gathering. But once you see the cracks, you can't unsee them. You can only watch as the whole damn thing falls apart. The guests trickled in coats slung over arms, gifts tucked under elbows. Hugs were exchanged, old stories retold. Daniel arrived last, his arm around his wife, Chloe. The sight of her stopped me cold. She looked radiant, golden hair cascading over one shoulder, a sleek black dress hugging her figure, a soft, perfect smile gracing her lips, and dangling from her wrist, the handbag. The same brand name that was printed on the torn label I found at the storage unit, Lux Leather Company. My pulse thudded in my ears. Coincidence, I tried to tell myself, but then I caught it, a flicker, a glance. Chloe's eyes darted to Andrew across the room, and Andrew for a split second stared back. Too long, too familiar. The world tilted. I barely registered my mother bustling past with a tray of champagne flutes. Barely heard my father booming a greeting from the living room. I moved on autopilot, greeting guests, smiling, laughing when required. But every breath, every heartbeat was a scream under the surface. I needed to be sure, I needed to confirm the connection before I detonated my family's world. When Chloe excused herself to the powder room, I followed. I caught up with her near the hallway. "Chloe," I said, lightly nodding toward her handbag. "That's a gorgeous purse. Where did you find it?" She froze for half a beat. "Just enough, oh," she said, voice high and brittle. A friend recommended the brand. I found it online. Great sale." Her eyes skittered away, her hand tightening on the strap like it might slip away. "Really?" I said, keeping my tone casual. "I've never heard of Lux Leather Company before. Is it local?" Another hesitation. Another glance past me toward the living room. "No," she said quickly. "Just a boutique shop my friend told me about." I smiled, wide, painless. "Sounds lovely," I said. "You'll have to send me the link sometime." "Of course," she murmured. Already inching away, I let her go. The pieces were aligning now, snapping into place with brutal clarity. Andrew's late nights, Chloe's nervous glances, the condom wrapper, the wine bottle, the handbag. It was all there in front of me. Undeniable, unforgivable. I slipped back into the living room, my hands trembling at my sides. Andrew was laughing with Daniel now, clapping him on the back, like he had not betrayed him. Like he was still the man we all thought he was. The betrayal curled hot and acid in my stomach. But I would not confront him here. Not yet. Tonight was my father's birthday. The party would go on, but before the night was over, everything they thought was true would come crashing down, and I would be the one to light the match. I drifted through the party like a ghost wrapped in silk. The band played softly in the corner, weaving old jazz tunes through the house. Candles flickered on every surface. Laughter rolled in waves from room to room. Everyone was smiling, everyone was pretending, including me. I handed out glasses of champagne, smooth tablecloths, nodded through stories about vacations and promotions and grandchildren. all while a storm raged just beneath my skin. Andrew caught my eye once across the dining room. He raised his glass, smiling like nothing in the world could touch him. I smiled back the movement, feeling foreign brittle. He did not know, not yet. But he would. I watched him work the room, his laugh a little too loud, his smile a little too quick. I watched Chloe, avoiding my gaze, fussing unnecessarily with the cake display, her hand trembling as she adjusted a napkin that did not need adjusting. Daniel sweet. Daniel stood beside her, oblivious, proud, loving. It made me sick. My father, George, called for everyone to gather in the living room for the speeches. The moment was drawing near. I stood by the archway, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear the first toast. Someone cracked a joke about George's stubbornness, and the room erupted in laughter. I waited, feeling the truth press against my ribs, like a living thing demanding to be set free. I could not unsee what I had seen. I could not unknow what I knew. And I could not pretend that tonight was a celebration when it was nothing more than a facade built on lies. When the applause died down and the chatter resumed, I moved. I crossed the room to Andrew. "Can we talk?" I asked, keeping my voice low. He blinked, surprised. "Now?" "Yes," I said, already moving toward the back porch. He hesitated, glancing around, but followed. The cool night air wrapped around us as I closed the door behind him. The fairy lights strung across the yard cast long, distorted shadows across the grass. Andrew shoved his hands into his pockets, his posture casual, but his eyes wary. "What's going on, Rachel?" he asked, a note of irritation creeping into his voice. I took a breath, steadying myself. "I know about the storage unit," I said, my voice low but firm. "I know about the wine bottle, the condom wrapper, the handbag label." For a moment his face was blank, then a flicker of fear quickly masked. "I have no idea what you're talking about," he said. Forcing a laugh, I stepped closer, feeling the anger rise sharp and clean inside me. "Don't lie to me," I said. "Someone sent me a message, told me to check it, and I did." His smile faltered. "Rachel," he said, tone softening, "you're being paranoid. Anyone could have broken into that unit. It's been sitting there for years." "Maybe," I said. "But how do you explain the clean wine bottle or the brand new handbag label?" He shifted his weight, his gaze sliding away. "It's not what you think," he muttered. "Then tell me," I demanded, my voice cracking. For a long moment he said nothing, just stared at the ground like the answers might be hiding there. Finally he exhaled sharply. "It was one time," he said, voice tight, "a stupid mistake." The words punched the air out of my lungs. "With Chloe?" I said, not a question. His head jerked up, eyes wide. You don't understand," he said quickly. "It didn't mean anything. It was after one of those long fights we had. You were always busy, always planning something." I stared at him, the excuses piling up like trash at my feet. "You slept with my brother's wife," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "And you want me to believe it didn't mean anything?" "It was a mistake," he said, stepping closer. "We can work through this. No one else has to know." "No one else has to know," I repeated, tasting the bitterness of it. "You want me to keep quiet? Smile, pretend nothing happened." "For the family," he said, almost pleading now, "for your father. For Daniel, think about what this would do to them." I shook my head, stepping back. "I'm not the one who broke this family," I said. "You did." The fairy lights flickered above us, casting his face into shifting shadows. "I'm begging you, Rachel," he said, voice raw. "Let's just get through tonight, please." I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw not the man I married, not the man who promised to protect my heart, but a stranger, a coward, a liar. I turned without a word and walked back into the house, the noise of the party swallowing me whole. Tonight, they would hear the truth, all of it. There was no turning back now. I moved through the crowded house, my pulse thundering in my ears, the blood rushing so loudly it nearly drowned out the jazz band still playing. Faces blurred around me, voices became a meaningless hum. All I could focus on was the burning truth inside my chest, and the unbearable weight of pretending. Not anymore. I caught a glimpse of Chloe near the cake table, smiling tightly at a guest, her hand once again resting on that gleaming handbag. Daniel was by her side, his arm draped protectively across her shoulders, completely unaware that the woman he loved was betraying him with his own brother-in-law. For a moment, a wave of pity washed over me, but pity was not enough to silence the truth. Not anymore. I walked over to the small platform at the center of the living room where the microphone stood ready for the birthday speeches. A few people glanced up curiously as I approached, but most stayed engaged in their conversations. I picked up the microphone. It was lighter than I expected. Or maybe it was me who had become heavier. I tapped the mic gently. The sound crackled. Drawing more heads around, I saw Andrew turn sharply from across the room, his smile freezing on his face. Good. Excuse me, I said, my voice cutting cleanly through the air. Can I have your attention? The chatter died almost instantly. In the sudden silence, I felt the ground tilt under me, but I stood firm. My name is Rachel Carter. I said, my voice steady, stronger than I expected. And before we celebrate my father tonight, there's something I need to say. A ripple of unease moved through the crowd. George shifted in his chair, frowning. My mother's hands paused, mid-gesture, a platter of appetizers forgotten. Daniel smiled encouragingly, unaware Andrew stepped forward slightly, his face pale, his mouth opening as if to interrupt. I lifted my hand, silencing him without a word. I received a message this morning. I continued, a message telling me to check my husband's storage unit. Gasps, confused murmurs. I saw Chloe freeze, the color draining from her face. In that unit, I said, my voice unwavering. I found a bottle of wine recently used. I found a condom wrapper, and I found a label from a luxury handbag brand. I let that hang in the air for a heartbeat. And when I came back here, I said, turning my gaze directly onto Chloe. I saw the same handbag on the arm of someone I thought was family. Silence gripped the room like a fist. Daniel looked at me puzzled, then at Chloe, then at Andrew, and I saw the moment the pieces clicked together for him. No. He whispered, backing away from Chloe. Tell me she's lying. Chloe's mouth opened and closed, but no words came. Andrew stepped forward, reaching for me, desperation on his face. Rachel, please. He said, don't do this, not here, not like this. I shook my head, stepping out of his reach. You already did this, I said, my voice breaking for the first time. I'm just telling the truth. The room erupted. Questions, accusations, shouts. My father rose from his seat, his face red with fury. You've ruined everything, George bellowed. This was supposed to be a celebration. I turned to him, the man who had always demanded perfection, demanded silence. I'm not the one who ruined it, I said, shaking. Andrew did, Chloe did. Daniel stood frozen, staring at Chloe, the betrayal written plain across her tear-streaked face. You cheated on me, he said, his voice hollow. With him, Chloe tried to speak, but no sound came out. Instead, she crumpled into a chair, burying her face in her hands. Andrew turned, facing the room, the mask he wore for so long slipping from his face. Guests began murmuring excuses, grabbing coats, avoiding eye contact. The beautiful facade of our family was crumbling piece by piece, right in front of everyone. And I stood there at the center of the wreckage, breathing, alive, free. For the first time in years, I was not playing a part. I was not smiling through the cracks. I was standing in the truth. No matter how ugly it looked, no matter how many people wanted to shove it back into the dark, I handed the microphone to the stunned band leader and stepped down from the platform. My mother watched me, horror and disbelief etched into every line of her face. George turned away, refusing to meet my eyes. Daniel sat slumped on the edge of the sofa, staring at nothing. And Andrew just stood there, lost and alone, finally stripped bare of all his lies. I walked past him without a word, my heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. Out the door, into the night, into whatever came next. There would be fallout. There would be anger, blame, judgment, but there would also be freedom. And for the first time in a long, long time, I chose freedom. The cold night air hit me like a slap when I stepped outside. For a moment, I stood on the porch, the distant hum of the highway and the muted music from the house colliding into a strange, hollow silence. Behind me, the party had shattered. The laughter, the stories, the illusion inside. I could hear raised voices, my father's angry bellow, my mother's frantic attempts to smooth things over, guests murmuring in uncomfortable clusters. The door creaked open behind me. Rachel, Daniel's voice called out. I turned to find him standing there, his face pale, his eyes rimmed red. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The weight of what had been broken hung too heavy between us. Finally, he stepped forward, closing the distance. You knew? He said, quietly searching my face. You knew before you said it. I nodded. I found out a few hours ago. He swallowed hard, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. Why didn't you tell me first? Why announce it like that? His voice cracked raw with grief. I shook my head, my own chest tightening. Because it wasn't just about you. I said it was about all of it. About every lie we've been living with. About every time I was told to stay quiet for the sake of appearances. Daniel looked down, breathing hard. I'm sorry, I whispered, for the pain, for how it happened, but not for telling the truth. His shoulders sagged. A long silence stretched between us. Then slowly Daniel nodded. You did the right thing, he said, voice hoarse. Even if it feels like hell right now, he stepped forward and wrapped me in a hug. Fierce and desperate. I held on to him tightly, grounding myself in the only person left who hadn't turned away. When he pulled back, his jaw was set with a new determination. I'm done with Chloe. He said, I'll pack her things tonight. She's not coming home. There was no anger in his voice anymore, only a terrible, exhausted clarity. He gave my hand a final squeeze, then disappeared into the house. I stayed there on the porch, breathing in the cool air, trying to steady the trembling inside me, but the night wasn't done with me yet. The door swung open again. This time it was my father, George Carter, the man who built our family on discipline and pride, whose approval I had chased like a shadow my entire life. He stormed toward me, his face flushed with fury. What the hell were you thinking? He snapped, his voice low and vicious. You couldn't have handled this privately. I met his gaze evenly. Handled it privately, I echoed. You mean like hiding it, pretending everything was fine? For the sake of the family, yes, he hissed. You humiliated all of us tonight. I felt the words like blows, not because they were true, but because I had spent so long believing that his anger, his disappointment meant I had failed. But tonight, for the first time, I saw it for what it was. Control, fear, cowardice. I didn't humiliate this family, I said, voice shaking but firm. Andrew and Chloe did. I just refused to be part of the cover-up. My father's jaw tightened. You always thought you were better than the rest of us. He said, too proud to forgive, too weak to protect what mattered. I laughed then, a short bitter sound. Protect what mattered, I said. If what mattered to you was a lie, then it never deserved protection. His face twisted, but he said nothing because he knew deep down, he knew. He turned away, muttering under his breath, and disappeared into the house. I let him go. I would not chase him anymore. Not tonight, not ever again. Inside the party was disintegrating. Guests slipped out the door with awkward smiles and mumbled goodbyes. The decorations sagged. The cake sat untouched. My mother, Margaret, stood by the fireplace, wringing her hands, her face pinched with distress. When our eyes met, I saw the plea there. The desperate wish for me to undo what had been done, to fix it, to apologize. I turned away. I would not carry their shame anymore. Andrew hovered near the staircase, his eyes following me. For a second, I thought he might come after me, beg, lie, offer up another round of empty promises, but he didn't. He just stood there looking like a man who had finally realized what he had lost. Good. I walked through the wreckage of my family's perfect facade, head high past the deflated balloons, past the discarded champagne flutes, out the front door, into the cool, honest dark. My phone buzzed in my pocket as I reached my car. A text from Daniel. I'm with you. Just 3 words, but enough to remind me that even as some doors slammed shut, others cracked open. I drove away from the house without looking back. I was not the same woman who had walked in that morning, arms full of cake batter and decorations. That woman had been living on borrowed illusions. This woman, this Rachel, was walking into a new life, one built on truth, even if it hurt, especially because it hurt. The next few weeks blurred together in a strange, painful rhythm. Papers were signed, keys were handed over. Divorce proceedings began like a slow, grinding machine. I moved out of the house Andrew and I had shared, leaving behind the curtains. I had picked the shelves we had built. The memories I no longer wanted to carry. I found a small apartment across town. Nothing special. 2 rooms, cracked tiles, a balcony overlooking a street lined with oak trees. But it was mine. Daniel helped me move his own apartment only a few blocks away now. We leaned on each other more than we said aloud. 2 broken siblings piecing something new together from the ruins my parents did not call. Not once. There was a hollow where their approval used to live, but day by day, it mattered less. Frankly, it felt like breathing again after holding my breath for years. One morning, as the sun spilled through the kitchen window of my new place, I sat with a cup of coffee and realized something. I was not broken. I was not ruined. I had been honest. I had stood in the middle of a crumbling world and told the truth. And if that made me the villain in someone else's story, so be it. The real betrayal would have been to stay silent. To live a lie for the sake of appearances. I thought about that a lot in the quiet moments. How often we are taught to prioritize peace over truth, family over integrity, smiles over scars. But real peace does not come from pretending. It comes from choosing yourself when no one else will. It comes from believing that even if the whole world turns away, standing in your truth is still worth it. Always I took a sip of my coffee, feeling the sunlight warm my skin, and smiled, a small, real smile. For the first time in a long time, I knew exactly who I was, and I would never let anyone take that from me again. What I learned from all of this is simple, but it cuts deep. Sometimes telling the truth will cost you everything you thought mattered. Sometimes the people you trusted most will turn their backs when you refuse to protect the pretty lies they built their lives around. But the truth will set you free. It will strip away the illusions. It will tear down the fragile walls you thought were keeping you safe. And when the dust settles, you will be left standing stronger than you ever imagined. It hurts, God, it hurts, but it is worth it. Because no matter what anyone says, no matter how many people walk away, you will have something they can never take from you again. Yourself. What would you have done if you were in my place? Would you have stayed silent to keep the peace? Or would you have spoken the truth even knowing it might cost you everything? Tell me in the comments below, and if you believe that honesty is worth fighting for, no matter the price type. Team Truth. Do not forget to subscribe to Sophia's Revenge Stories, so you never miss another powerful true story every single day. Your story deserves to be heard too.